Harbour Eastern Passage.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just wanted to make a few comments. One of the things that the Minister of Environment has said is that Nova Scotians are already leaders in protecting the environment. And I agree in many ways, but I want to do a tiny bit of a history lesson. About 25 years ago, give or take a year, we had Camp Hill Hospital, and we had such severe environmental issues with that hospital that over 600 employees were poisoned, many of whom never recovered their health and never went back to work. And it was the people of Nova Scotia who fought to get the Nova Scotia Environmental Health Centre built out in Fall River, Nova Scotia. And I forget the exact day that it opened, but when it first opened, it had a 4-year wait to get in, and then as time went on, it got better. Almost immediately after the Environmental Health Centre was opened, the budget, I think, was around 1.1 or 1.2 million. The very next year, the budget was starting to be cut. And over the years, as we became better at promoting scent-free products and scent-free workplaces, there was a fear in the community that the Environmental Health Centre would eventually be shut down. And people were like, oh, that can't possibly be true because we're all committed to the environment. Well, I was part of the staff at the Nova Scotia Environmental Health Centre when we amalgamated with the Nova Scotia Health Authority. And so the fears, again, that the Nova Scotia Environmental Health Centre was going to be shut down at some point or lose its funding continued to grow. And what has happened under this government is the Nova Scotia Environmental Health Centre, which was the only environmental health centre in the Maritimes that I'm aware of, which saw patients come here from across the country, changed its name from Nova Scotia Environmental Health Centre to Integrated Chronic Care Services. Now, that might not seem like a big deal to some, but to those who have been poisoned by the environment, it's a very big deal because it took the focus off of those who have already been made sick by the environment. So although we can't ask questions today, I'm having a little trouble finding out how much funding there is for this integrated chronic care services and how much of that funding is actually going towards those who have environmental induced illness. So this particular act, Bill 152, the Plastic Bags Reduction Act, for anybody who's been made sick by the environment, they will see this as a good thing because you have to produce these bags and then you have to dispose of them. One of the things that this act does not do, though, is specify how well the enforcement's going to go. So for a neighbour of mine, Ernie Arsenault, who owns Smitty's in Dartmouth and who has his home right across the street from my constituency office, every day he's out picking up Tim Hortons cups and other single-use plastics. And it's a large part of the garbage that he picks up on a daily basis. So littering is already regulated, and the people in my constituency have taken it upon themselves to go around our beaches and boardwalks and roadways to pick up litter because we can't get garbage bins on our public beaches and walkways that would give somebody a place to put something. So now we're taking away a plastic bag, which I fully support, but the enforcement of this is not really outlined here and we didn't hear it mentioned. I'm assuming it's going to fall upon the municipality to do that. So is there increased funding from the province to the municipalities to now enforce another bill? Because once it's passed, somebody's got to enforce the regulations. The other concern I have, because we weren't given very many details, is what the regulations will actually be. And for those who are unaware of how things work in the House, you can bring in an act without bringing in the regulations, which really means that an awful lot can be decided behind the scenes without any debate here in the legislature. And one of the words that's always used in these acts is the governor and council may make regulations with respect to, and then there's a list of A to L as to what they might do. It would have been nice to have some regulations that we could debate here because there's going to be a cost associated with those regulations. The last thing I want to point out, and it's purely from a physiotherapy perspective that I do this, is in the olden days, we were all buying green boxes to put food to bring home from the grocery store. And the reason we're not using those so much now is because we have an aging population and those boxes are heavy. And there are a lot of people who take the bus to and from the grocery store. So the green boxes were a great idea and people were buying them. I had many, and then they didn't seem to work. We also then brought in the large plastic bags that the grocery stores produced, but they are very heavy if you're a senior or if you have mobility issues. We also brought in cloth bags, and if you ever read the research on cloth bags, I forget the right word, but the leftover from the food can contaminate those bags, and that's a challenge, and we didn't talk about that. So when we talk about we're not going to do something, we have to talk about what are we going to do instead, because that's what people want to know. Well, if you're taking this away as an option, what's the best option moving forward? And I didn't hear anything about that in the introduction. So I'm hoping that these are just some things that you might consider discussing. I'm assuming some of them will come up during law amendments, and I'll look forward to hearing the remarks when they do. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.